I'll never forget the way the fog curled around my shoulders that morning, like something alive, like fingers dragging through the cold mist. The lake was quiet, still, too still. Even the oars in my hands seemed reluctant to disturb the surface. It was the kind of silence that pressed into your chest. I didn't see the boat at first. It was only when the sun broke through a stubborn slit in the clouds that I spotted it, slouched low in the water like it was ashamed to be there. A half-submerged fishing boat, paint peeling off in sheets, moss crawling up the sides. The wood groaned when my little rowboat knocked against it. Something about that sound made the hairs on my arms rise, and then I saw him, a German shepherd, sitting motionless on the deck right where the bow split open, soaked to the bone, shivering. But what got me, what really made something tighten in my throat, was that he wasn't looking at me. He was staring into the cabin, not a glance, not a flicker of curiosity toward me or the boat I came in. Just eyes locked on that rotted doorway. I called out softly, "Hey, buddy." But he didn't move. His ears twitched, that was it. Something about the way that dog refused to look away. It made my skin crawl. I hadn't planned on being out on the lake that morning. Honestly, I didn't even want to be in the cabin at all. But grief makes you do strange things. My little brother, Daniel, loved this place. Said the water spoke to him. He was always out here with a fishing pole or his sketchbook. A year ago, almost to the day, he took his boat out and never came back. The sheriff found what was left of it 3 days later. No sign of Daniel, just the boat and a frayed piece of red rope hanging over the side. I didn't believe in signs, or ghosts, or any of that crap. Not really. But lately, I'd been dreaming. Not the usual dreams either. Always the same. I'm standing at the edge of the lake, fog creeping up my legs like vines. A boat appears, always the same one. Old, cracking, tied with that red rope, water whispering like voices beneath the hull. I wake up cold, sweating, with my sheets twisted around my legs like rope. That's why I came back. I told myself it was to scatter the rest of his ashes in his favorite spot, but deep down, I think I just wanted something. Closure, maybe. Answers. Maybe even Daniel. God, I know how crazy that sounds. I brought Milo with me, my rescue lab mix. He's the only constant in my life since Daniel died. Calm, gentle, unnervingly smart. He never liked the lake much, though. Always stayed near the trees, never went too close to the water. That morning, when I pushed the rowboat out, he sat at the edge of the dock and whined. Like he knew something I didn't. Now I wonder if he did. Back on the water, I steadied my boat against the side of the derelict one. The shepherd still hadn't moved. Closer now, I could see how bad he looked. His coat was matted with lakeweed, clumps of algae, and something else. A sticky reddish tint clung to his chest fur, metallic smelling. Blood, no collar, no tags, no leash. Just the lake and this dog staring into the dark cabin. I whispered, "Hey, it's okay, boy. Let's get you out of here." Still no movement. His ears were up, his tail rigid but not aggressive, more like guarding, as if the boat held something in that cabin, and it was his job to make sure it didn't come out. I reached for the door handle. That's when he growled. Low, deep, not threatening, warning. I paused. He glanced at me just once as if to say don't, then locked eyes with the dark again. Every instinct told me to leave, to row back, pretend I never saw the boat, never found him, but I couldn't. I stepped back and sat down in my boat. "Okay," I said, "let's just get you warm." I pulled a spare fleece blanket from the seat and laid it out, patting it gently. "Come on." It took several minutes. He wouldn't move at first. I didn't try to force him, just sat and waited. Finally, slowly, with a kind of reluctant dignity, he stepped onto my boat, never turned his back to the cabin, never blinked. Even as I rowed away, his eyes stayed fixed on that open black doorway. Then I saw it. The cabin door. It had been closed when I got there. I was sure of it. Dead sure. But now, as I drifted back, the door was hanging slightly open, just enough to see inside, and I swear to God I saw something move. Back at the dock, Milo was waiting, tail stiff, ears up. The second he saw the shepherd, he barked, a short, sharp bark, then sniffed cautiously. He reached forward, then whined and backed away. That wasn't like Milo. The shepherd didn't react, just stood on the dock, dripping, staring back toward the lake. I brought out towels, tried to dry him off. He let me, but barely acknowledged me. His attention was fixed behind us, where the boat had been. "Okay," I muttered, nerves on edge. "You're coming inside." I got him into the cabin and set him up in the corner with a bowl of food and water. He didn't touch either, just curled up on the mat by the front window, eyes still facing the water. Later that night, I poured myself a whiskey and tried to write in my journal. That's when I noticed it. The shepherd was no longer watching the lake. He was looking straight at my cabin window. I froze, turned to look. Nothing outside but trees and fog. No lights, no sounds. But he wouldn't look away. Milo whimpered. From under the table. I didn't sleep well. Kept hearing things, tapping, shifting floorboards. At one point I thought I heard whispering, like voices underwater. At 3:12 a.m. I heard a growl, low, from the living room. The shepherd stood facing the front door, fur raised slightly. He didn't bark, didn't move, just stared. I crept out of bed, heart hammering. "What is it, boy?" No answer, obviously. Just that low, menacing growl, like something was just outside. I reached the window. Nothing. No, wait. Something wet. A smear on the floor. I turned. A single perfect paw print, wet, pressed into the wood, leading up the hallway, right toward my bedroom. The morning didn't start with coffee or sunlight. It started with barking, Milo's, sharp and panicked, echoing through the cabin like an alarm bell. I jolted upright, heart pounding, my legs tangled in the sheets. It was still dark outside. That gray-blue pre-dawn light that makes everything look like it's been dipped in milk. I stumbled into the living room. Milo stood stiff-legged near the fireplace, his nose pressed to the wall just beneath the painting of the lake. His tail was between his legs. I'd never seen him like that before. "What is it, boy?" He didn't respond, just whimpered and scratched at the wood below the frame. Shadow was already there, perfectly still. His ears were pricked. His eyes, sharp, unblinking, were locked on the painting. That's when I saw it. Just beneath the edge of the frame, a faint, muddy smear. I lifted the painting off the wall, and a puff of dust bloomed out like a sigh. Behind it, taped directly to the wooden planks, was something unexpected. A map, old, yellowed. The paper felt like it might dissolve in my hands, inked entirely in what looked like deep red pigment, not quite brown, not quite rust. It was a hand-drawn map of the lake. Not a typical tourist map either. This was detailed, with markings of trees, depths, even notes scrawled in the margins like coordinates. One island had been circled over and over again. The ink had bled through the paper. I stared at it and felt a strange pulse behind my eyes. Because I knew that island, not from memory, not from real life, from dreams. When I was a kid, I used to have this recurring nightmare. Me alone in a boat, drifting toward an island I didn't want to reach. Always the same shape, always the same black rock in the middle. The trees there whispered, and there was always something waiting for me at the edge of the shore. Something with no face. I thought I'd outgrown those dreams. But looking at the map now, with Shadow suddenly pawing at the edge of the island, I felt the chill of them sliding back over me like lake water. I named the dog Shadow that morning. It felt right. The way he moved, always half in light, half in something else, watching, waiting, never sleeping. And he still hadn't touched the food, not a bite. Just stared out the window all day, nose sometimes twitching, ears catching sounds I couldn't hear. Milo didn't want to be near him. He'd taken to hiding beneath the bed. And me? I'd started locking the doors at night, not because of Shadow, because of whatever might be following him. That night, just after midnight, I heard it again, sloshing. Not wind, not waves. Something heavy moving through the water, pacing the shoreline. I crept to the back window, holding my breath. The lake glowed pale under the moon, the surface smooth and quiet. But there, in the distance, a second boat, floating just past where I'd left the derelict one. No lights, no figure, just drifting. I blinked. It was gone. At first light, I rowed out again. The fog was thicker than ever. It closed behind me like a curtain. I felt like I was rowing through a memory, not a lake. The abandoned boat was where I'd left it. But something was wrong. The deck was different. The dust, fine gray powder that coated the wooden boards, had been disturbed. There were footprints, bare feet, small like a child's. But the stride was strange, dragging, like something being pulled. I stepped aboard and Shadow leapt easily behind me, tail rigid. The air felt heavier inside the cabin. I had to duck to enter. I used my phone light to scan the shadows. The same stench as before. Mold, decay, something else. Something burnt. I swept the floor gently, and that's when I found it. A floorboard loose beneath my boot. I pried it up, tucked. Underneath, wrapped in old fishing line, was a crumpled Polaroid. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. The image was warped and faded, but I could still make out the details. Two kids, side by side, grinning with their feet in the water. Fishing. Rods in hand. One of them was Daniel. Even water damaged, I knew my brother's face. The other kid, I couldn't tell. The eyes were scratched out, deeply, like someone had taken a blade to it over and over. The face had been obliterated, but the arm was draped. Over Daniel's shoulder, familiar somehow. I looked at the back. No date, no names, just a smear of red that looked suspiciously like blood. That's when I smelled it. Charred wood, not like a fireplace, like something recent, fresh, but there was nothing burning. No smoke, no heat, just slam. The cabin door snapped shut behind me. I panicked. I dropped the Polaroid and lunged for the door, banging my shoulder hard as I shoved it open. It gave easily. No resistance. Like nothing had happened. Shadow was on the deck, pacing in circles, ears flat, eyes skyward. I looked up. No birds, no clouds, just endless gray and silence, the kind that screams in your ears. "Let's go," I whispered, grabbing the photo and jumping into the rowboat. Shadow didn't move. He stood at the edge of the deck, staring into the sky. "Come on, boy," I said again, this time louder. He barked, a single, sharp bark. And that's when the boat lurched. Not mine. The derelict. I turned and saw the deck shift slightly, just a few inches, enough to rock the whole thing. Then came the splash. To the left of the cabin, something rising. Rope. Red rope. Dripping with water and algae, rising unnaturally from beneath the surface. Tangled around it. Bones. Small. Human. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't speak, couldn't scream. I rowed, harder than I'd ever rowed in my life. The water fought me, as if it wanted me to stay. But I pushed through, muscles burning, hands blistering. Shadow leapt in behind me just as we broke the fog line. I didn't stop until I hit the dock. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I stood by the fireplace, staring at the map. The red circle around the island burned in my mind. Why had Daniel never mentioned it? And who was the other boy in the photo? Shadow lay curled by the window again, but this time he wasn't watching the lake. He was watching me. And for the first time, I was afraid of what I might see if I looked back. I didn't even notice my hands were shaking until I tried to pour coffee. It splashed over the rim and down onto the counter, the dark liquid pooling in a small circle. My fingers had gone cold, like the blood was retreating. Milo whined behind. Me. Shadow stood at the back door, staring out at the lake again. He hadn't moved all morning, and I couldn't stop thinking about that rope. The bones, the way the air had gone dead, like even the birds were holding their breath. I don't remember making the decision to go back outside, but I must have moved on instinct, a need to keep busy, to do something. I stepped off the porch, and Shadow was suddenly beside me, silent, focused, as though he'd been waiting. Then he started to dig, just under the edge of the porch, near the sagging corner post. At first I thought he was after a mole or rabbit, but then I saw the edge of something red. He dug faster, dirt flying, his nails churning the earth like he knew exactly what he was looking for. And then he stopped. I knelt beside him and reached into the hole. It was a child's life jacket, faded orange, torn along one side, the fabric frayed. It was soaked through, and something was stuffed inside the lining. My hands hesitated. A notebook, warped and water-stained, barely holding together. I opened it gently. Inside were dozens, no, hundreds of drawings, all in pencil or crayon, sloppy at first, then sharper, more detailed. The first few pages were of the lake, then boats, then people, arms flailing in water, faces contorted. Then came the shadows, tall, thin figures with glowing eyes, repeated over and over, on boats, on the shore, in windows, and the handwriting. It stopped me cold. I recognized it. It was Daniel's. That night, I couldn't stop flipping through the pages. Every now and then, Shadow would glance at the notebook, then back at me. I swear he understood, that he'd seen those same shadows once too. One drawing chilled me more than all the rest. It was the boat. That boat, the derelict one. But different. There was something beneath it. A door. A trapdoor with a rusted handle, drawn just under the rug inside the cabin. I stared at it, heart pounding. There was no trapdoor. I would have seen it. Wouldn't I? I don't know why I hadn't remembered it before. The island. Daniel and I must have been 10 or 11. He was older by 2 years. We'd snuck out one night during a summer visit, taking Grandpa's old rowboat while the grown-ups snored inside. The cabin. The lake was so quiet. Still. We laughed as we drifted out, pretending we were pirates. The fog came suddenly, thick, white, clinging. We couldn't find our way back. Daniel tried to paddle, but we spun in circles. We both cried. Next morning, they found us near the southern cove. Daniel never talked about what happened during those missing hours. I always assumed he'd just blocked it out. Now I'm not so sure, because I flipped to the back of the notebook. And there it was, that same night, drawn from memory. Me, asleep in the boat. Daniel, awake, eyes wide, and a black shape behind him, towering with long fingers pressed to his shoulders. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to go back. I strapped Shadow into the front of the boat. Milo whined at first, resisting, but eventually curled between my feet. The water was calm, deceptively calm. The fog rolled in halfway across the lake, just like last time. It swallowed everything, trees, dock, even the sky. I followed muscle, memory more than sight. Every ripple of the oars sounded too loud, like I was waking something. When the derelict boat finally appeared through the mist, I nearly dropped the oars. It looked the same, but somehow worse. The wood was darker, damp, like it had absorbed more than just water. I climbed aboard, heart rattling in my chest. The cabin door creaked open and I stepped inside, Milo trailing close, Shadow behind him like a sentinel. I moved the rug, and there it was, a small iron ring, almost invisible against the floorboards, a latch. My pulse throbbed in my ears. I looked at Milo. He whimpered and backed up. Shadow growled, low and constant. I opened it anyway. The smell hit me first, not just rot, salt, decay, and something oddly sweet, like syrup left too long in a cupboard. I shone my light down. Stairs, not a ladder. Stairs, leading into the blackness. Below the deck, how deep could it go? This was just an old fishing boat. It shouldn't have a below deck. I took a breath and stepped down. One step, then two. The wood groaned under my weight. By the fifth step, the light barely reached the bottom. And when my foot hit the floor, I knew I wasn't in any part of the boat that should exist. The walls were warped, pulsing slightly, damp, almost alive. My boots squished against the ground. It felt like sponge. There were shelves, makeshift tables, and scattered across every surface, Polaroids, hundreds of them, maybe more, each one damp, edges curling from moisture, some stuck to the wall, like old leaves, others strewn across the floor like fallen feathers. I picked one up, a child, smiling, another, two dogs, one looked like Shadow. Then I saw the disturbing ones, faces blurred, eyes clawed out, some scratched with red ink. One showed a group of children, standing on this very boat, but their mouths were open in frozen screams. And then, I found it, a photo of me. I was maybe 7, standing at the edge of this deck. My clothes were wet, my eyes wide, almost vacant. I'd never been here. I shouldn't remember being here. But the photo was real. And Shadow, now at my side, whined, his ears flat, eyes glued to something in the darkness. I turned. There, behind the last table, something moved. Just a flicker. And then I saw it. A door. Not wood. Not metal. Just darkness. Like a tear in the air itself. It pulsed. Once. And I heard it. A voice. Distant. Echoing from below. Come back. The stairs creaked louder the deeper I went, like the boat was groaning under the weight of everything it had witnessed. The air shifted, cold and syrup-sweet. My flashlight flickered once, twice, then steadied. Shadow led now, tail low, teeth bared. Milo had refused to follow. He sat at the top of the stairs, trembling as though some invisible line held him back. I couldn't blame him, because as I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw it. A rusted metal crib, bolted to the floor, like someone had wanted it to stay there forever. The metal was warped with time, stained red-brown. But inside, bones. Small, fragile, arranged like someone had tried to tuck them in, and beside them, nestled between broken ribs, was a child's toy, a wooden boat, hand-carved, the edges smoothed with use, and coiled tightly around one of the bars, that same red rope, frayed, dripping. I stepped forward, knees shaking. My fingers hovered just above the rope, and that's when I heard it. Whispers, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, twisting around each other, barely above a breath. You left him, he remembered, always watching. They weren't angry. They weren't kind either, just there, like the static of something long buried, never fully gone. Shadow barked, one sharp guttural sound, and lunged forward, past me, teeth bared, and that's when it emerged. Not from the crib, but from the dark behind it, a figure, tall, featureless. Its face was smooth like wax, but its shoulders were familiar. The way it moved, the faint tilt of its head. My knees buckled. It smelled like cedar and leather, like Daniel's old jacket. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The rope pulsed, once, then again. I reached for it, and the moment my fingers grazed, the rough, wet fibers, everything came back, not in fragments, in a flood, the night on the lake, the fog. But we weren't alone. There'd been a third boy, Eli. He wasn't family, just a kid from the next cabin over, maybe a year younger. Tagged along that night even though Daniel said no, but I'd begged, said please, said we couldn't leave him behind. We laughed the whole way to the island. Then the fog rolled in, and we played a stupid game, daring each other to jump in. Eli jumped. We thought he was pretending, until he didn't come back up. Daniel dove in. Froze. I couldn't move. When Daniel surfaced, dragging Eli's body, he was already too late. But Daniel made me promise, swear, never to tell. He said it was his fault, that he'd watched me freeze, that he had to protect me. He made me swear to forget. I had, until now, because the boat wasn't just abandoned. It was his penance. He came here, year after year, trying to make sense of it, trying to reach Eli. But something else had answered. Something old. Something that lived in guilt and silence, that thrived in it. I stepped closer to the crib. Shadow didn't move. He lay beside it now, ears down, letting out a long, low whimper that sounded too much like mourning. The red rope unraveled at my touch. It began to disintegrate, thread by thread, like whatever bound this place, this secret, was unraveling with it. The whispers softened. "Thank you. Go home." And then they were gone. I don't remember climbing back up. Don't remember pushing the hatch open or how I ended up on the deck again. Milo pressed himself into me as soon as I surfaced, tail curled between his legs. Shadow sat at the edge of the boat, staring at the water. Then he let out a sound I'll never forget. Not a bark, not a growl, a howl, long, sorrowful, full of something that felt like memory. And then the lake went still. The fog lifted, and I saw it, etched into the moss on the side of the hull, just beneath the waterline, ELI, and slowly, the letters faded, one by one, washed away by the ripples. I cried. Not loud, not ugly, just steady. Tears I hadn't known I'd buried. I cried for Eli, for Daniel. For all the years I'd refused to look backward, too scared of what I might see. Milo rested his head on my knee. Shadow finally curled up and closed his eyes for the first time since we'd met, and I rowed, back across the water, back to the cabin. As I pulled away, the old boat began to sink, quietly, without splash or drama. It just disappeared beneath the surface like it had never been there at all. Back at the cabin, everything looked the same, and yet different. The light was warmer, the air softer. I dried the dogs off, gave them each a treat, sat by the fireplace with a blanket, and let the silence settle. That's when I noticed the painting above the mantel. It wasn't of the lake anymore. It was a photograph, framed in the same carved wood. 3 children, standing at the edge of a dock. 2 dogs beside them, one golden, one dark and lean. The kids were holding hands, smiling. One looked like Daniel, another like me. The third I didn't recognize, but he smiled the brightest. I stared at it for a long time, and just as I stood to walk away, I swear to God, one of them blinked. End of story.